She won't say it. She will never say it. But if you miss these signals, you'll feel it when it's already too late. You've been taught to look for obvious signs, direct flirting, clear interest, words that remove doubt. But that's not how this works, especially not with a married woman. The rules are different. The risks are higher. And because of that, everything becomes quieter, more controlled, more dangerous if you don't understand it. Listen carefully. I'm not here to romanticize crossing boundaries or encourage you to chase what isn't yours. I'm here to show you what's actually happening beneath the surface, because whether you act on it or not, awareness changes how you carry yourself as a man. Attraction in this situation doesn't announce itself, it leaks. The first sign most men completely overlook is emotional positioning. A married woman who is simply being polite will keep things structured. Conversations stay surface level, safe topics, predictable energy. But when attraction starts forming, something shifts in how she places you in her emotional world. She begins to choose you, not publicly, but subtly. She lingers in conversations longer than necessary. She finds reasons to bring up personal thoughts, not just facts. And here's the key detail most men miss. She starts sharing things that don't serve a purpose. Because when a woman is emotionally invested, she doesn't just exchange information. She reveals fragments of her inner life. It might look like nothing, a complaint about her day, a small frustration, a passing comment about feeling misunderstood. But psychologically, this is not random. This is selective vulnerability. And vulnerability is never given without intention. Now, understand this clearly. This doesn't mean she wants to act on it. Attraction and action are not the same thing. A mature woman can feel something and still choose restraint. But the feeling itself, that's what you're learning to recognize. Here's where it gets deeper. When she's around you, her emotional tone becomes slightly different than it is with others. Not dramatically, not in a way that would expose her, but enough that if you're paying attention, you'll notice a contrast. Her laughter comes a little quicker, her attention stays a little longer, her presence feels just a bit more engaged. This is not coincidence. This is her nervous system responding to you. And the reason most men miss this is because they're looking for intensity. They expect bold signals. But in reality, attraction, especially in a situation like this, thrives in restraint. It hides inside small deviations from normal behavior. Let me give you something to think about. If she treats everyone the same, there is no signal. If she treats you slightly differently, there is meaning, not fantasy, not assumption, meaning. But you have to be disciplined enough not to project your own desires onto her behavior. This is where men lose control of the situation. They see one sign and they build an entire story around it. That's not awareness, that's self-deception. Real awareness is quiet, observational, grounded. It notices patterns without rushing to conclusions. And here's the uncomfortable truth most men don't want to hear. Sometimes the attraction isn't about you as much as it is about what you represent. You might represent attention she's not getting, energy she's missing, a version of herself she feels disconnected from. So when she opens up to you emotionally, it feels personal, and it is, but it's also symbolic. You become a mirror for something deeper. That's why this first sign is so powerful, because it's not about what she says. It's about why she says it to you. And if you're honest with yourself, you've felt this before. That moment when a conversation goes just a little deeper than expected, when the energy shifts in a way you can't logically explain, but you feel it. That's not imagination, that's psychology. And once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. But what matters isn't just recognizing the signal. What matters is what kind of man you become when you do. What gives her away isn't what she says, it's what she can't quite control. Because no matter how composed she appears, attraction always leaves traces on the body. Not dramatic, obvious signals, but micro behaviors. Small, almost invisible adjustments that happen when someone feels something they're trying not to reveal. The second sign is controlled proximity. A woman who feels nothing keeps a natural, consistent distance. It's comfortable, neutral, unremarkable. But when attraction enters the picture, especially in a situation where she must remain careful, distance becomes intentional. She won't move too close. That would be obvious. But she also won't stay as far as she normally would. Instead, she exists in that subtle in-between space, close enough to feel your presence, far enough to protect her boundaries. You'll notice it in how she positions herself in a room. She might choose the seat next to you when there were other options. She might stand just within your personal space during a conversation, not enough to alarm you, but enough that you're aware of it. And here's the detail most men overlook. She doesn't stay there for long. She moves in, then slightly out, engages, then resets. It's a quiet push and pull dynamic, and it's not random. It's her managing two opposing forces at the same time, interest and restraint. That internal conflict creates rhythm, and if you're paying attention, you'll feel it. Now let's go deeper, because proximity alone isn't enough. People stand close for many reasons: environment, culture, habit. What makes this different is how her attention behaves while she's near you. When she's in that space, her focus sharpens. She listens more closely. Her responses come quicker. There's less distraction in her behavior. It's as if for a moment the rest of the environment fades slightly into the background. This is not something she consciously decides to do. This is attentional bias, your brain naturally prioritizing what feels emotionally relevant. And here's where things get even more revealing. Watch what happens when someone else enters the interaction. If there's no attraction, her attention redistributes easily. She engages the group evenly without friction. But if something is there, something she's managing, you'll notice a subtle delay, a hesitation. Her attention doesn't shift as smoothly. It's like her mind has to pull itself away from you and rebalance. Again, not obvious, not dramatic, but real. Now let me ground you in something important. None of this gives you permission to act carelessly. In fact, it demands the opposite. Because when a woman is managing attraction within boundaries, the situation becomes psychologically delicate. If you misread it, you risk embarrassment for yourself and for her. If you push it, you create pressure she never asked for. And if you ignore it completely, you miss an opportunity to understand something deeper about human behavior. This is about awareness, not pursuit. Because here's the truth most men aren't taught. Attraction is not always an invitation. Sometimes it's just a moment, a feeling, a passing connection that exists without needing to become anything more. And a grounded man knows the difference. He doesn't chase every signal. He doesn't inflate every interaction into a story. He observes, he understands, and he remains in control of himself. That's where your power actually is. Not in reacting to her behavior, but in mastering your response to it. Now let me give you one more layer most people never consider. Proximity isn't just physical, it's emotional. And when both start aligning, even briefly, the experience becomes intense. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because something almost did. And those almost moments, they stay with people longer than the obvious ones, because the mind keeps replaying what it didn't fully understand. So if you've ever walked away from an interaction feeling like something was there, but you couldn't quite define it, you weren't imagining it. You were sensing the space between intention and restraint, and that space is where the truth usually lives. What she says might stay controlled, where she looks does not. The third sign is eye behavior that lingers just a second too long. Now be careful here, because eye contact alone means nothing. People make eye contact out of politeness, confidence, habit. If that's all you're relying on, you'll misread the situation completely. What matters is the pattern, the rhythm of her gaze, and the moments where it breaks its own rules. A woman who feels neutral will look at you, then look away in a natural conversational flow. It's balanced, predictable, there's no tension inside it. But when attraction is present, and especially when it has to stay hidden, the eyes start to reveal what the words are trying to conceal. She'll hold eye contact just a fraction longer than necessary, then break it a little too quickly. That contrast is everything, because it shows two things happening at once: engagement and self-correction. She connects, then catches herself. And here's where it becomes even more telling. After she looks away, there's often a return. Not immediately, not in a way that draws attention, but within a few seconds, her eyes find their way back to you, almost as if her mind didn't fully disengage. That return glance is not accidental. It's curiosity that hasn't settled. It's attention that hasn't been resolved. Now let's go deeper than most men ever do. Watch her when she thinks you're not looking. This is where the signal becomes clean. Because when she believes there's no risk of being noticed, her behavior becomes less filtered. You might catch her looking at you from across the room, then quickly shifting her gaze when you turn, not in panic, but in awareness. That micro reaction, seeing you notice her, noticing you, is one of the most honest moments in human behavior. It's not rehearsed, it's not strategic, it's instinct. And instinct rarely lies. But again, discipline matters, because your mind will try to turn moments into meaning that isn't there. One glance is nothing. Two could be coincidence. A consistent pattern, that's where awareness begins. Now here's the part that separates surface level observation from real psychological insight. It's not just about how often she looks at you. It's about when she does. If her gaze finds you during emotionally charged moments, when she's laughing, when she's reacting, when something meaningful is happening. That tells you her attention is linking you to her emotional experience. And that's powerful because attraction is not just about seeing someone. It's about associating them with how you feel. So if her eyes keep returning to you during those peaks, it means your presence is becoming part of her internal narrative, even if she never says it out loud. Now, let me give you a truth most men overlook completely. Sometimes the strongest signal is not the gaze itself, it's the effort to avoid it. If she suddenly becomes more aware of where she looks, if she actively tries not to meet your eyes in situations where it would be natural, that can be just as revealing. Because avoidance requires awareness, and awareness requires interest. People don't carefully avoid what they feel nothing about. They only regulate what they're conscious of. So whether it's prolonged eye contact, repeated glances, or intentional avoidance, the common thread is this: you are occupying space in her attention. And attention is the first currency of attraction, but don't lose perspective. Attention is not commitment. It's not a promise. It's not a decision. It's simply the mind saying, this matters enough for me to notice. What you do with that understanding defines your character. Because the easiest mistake to make is believing that every signal deserves a response. It doesn't. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is recognize the moment, understand it, and leave it exactly where it is, unspoken, uncomplicated, untouched. And that level of restraint, that's what separates a reactive man from a self-aware one. The final sign is the one most men feel but almost never trust, because it doesn't live in what she says or where she stands or even how she looks at you. It lives in how she treats the connection when it could go further but doesn't. This is intentional boundary reinforcement. And if you don't understand it, you'll misread the entire situation. Here's what it looks like. There are moments, rare, quiet, but very real, where the interaction could shift. A pause that lasts a second too long, a shared look that carries more weight than it should, a silence that feels full instead of empty. In those moments, something unspoken sits between you. Potential. And then she redirects. She changes the subject. She steps back slightly. She introduces a neutral comment. Not abruptly, not awkwardly, but precisely enough to close the door without making it obvious there was ever a door to begin with. That's not disinterest, that's awareness. Because a woman who feels nothing doesn't need to manage anything. There's no tension to resolve, no line to protect. The interaction stays flat, consistent, uneventful. But when something is there and she chooses not to cross that line, her behavior becomes deliberate. She regulates the moment, and that regulation is the signal. Now listen carefully, because this is where most men get it completely wrong. They see the pull, but they focus on the push. They feel the connection, but they interpret the boundary as rejection. So they either chase harder or they shut down completely. Both are mistakes, because what you're witnessing isn't a mixed signal. It's a complete signal with two parts, attraction and restraint. And if you only read one side of it, you misunderstand the entire dynamic. A grounded man can hold both truths at once. He can recognize that something exists and also respect that it's not meant to be acted on. That level of clarity is rare because it requires you to step out of your ego. It requires you to stop asking, what can I get from this? And start asking, what is actually happening here? And sometimes what's happening is simply this. Two people felt a moment of connection in a situation where it can't and shouldn't become anything more. That doesn't make it meaningless, but it does make it limited, and maturity is knowing the difference. Now, here's the deeper psychological truth. When a woman reinforces boundaries while still engaging positively with you, she is revealing something about her internal values. She's showing you that she is aware of her emotions, but not controlled by them. And whether you agree with her choices or not, that level of self-regulation tells you something important about her character. The question is, what does your response say about yours? Because this is where your identity as a man becomes visible. Do you respect the boundary without needing it to be explained? Do you maintain composure without turning the moment into something it isn't? Do you walk away with awareness instead of attachment? Or do you let a brief emotional signal pull you into a story that was never meant to exist? This is the difference between clarity and confusion, between control and impulse, between understanding attraction and being controlled by it. So let me leave you with something personal, not a statement, a question. If you strip away the situation, the labels, the circumstances, and you look only at your own behavior, are you the kind of man who can recognize a connection without needing to possess it? Or do you only feel powerful when something becomes yours? I want you to answer that honestly in the comments. And if this made you see something you hadn't seen before, something real, something uncomfortable, something true, then don't keep it to yourself. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this before they misunderstand a moment that was never meant to become a mistake.